All right.
All right, there you go.
Perfect. Thanks for coming, everybody. I do appreciate it. Matt appreciates it. We all appreciate it. I think, like you said, I've got some, things that are some topics that are near and dear to my heart, because I think they're very important for everybody, not just in design thinking, but in good teaming and building businesses and building groups of any kind. I think all of this stuff that I'm going to talk about is vitally important. And overall, what I want you to take away from it is not necessarily, sure, like learning to do the tool is super handy because then you can go repeat it. But I think overall, what I want you to do is to learn something that you can apply, even if it's just like one little element. And so we're going to talk about vision statements, what they are, some misconceptions about them, and what I've learned and have really begun to believe that they are and how they serve us. And then also what follows that are mission statements and tasking that comes from mission statements. And it's not the type of mission statement that you're accustomed to. You're accustomed to a corporate type mission statement, and this is something completely different. So I'm hoping that I'm going to share something, maybe some familiar information under a new concept and present it in a different way. So get you to kind of change the way you're thinking about it. And then we'll take the examples from these demonstrations and then use the information that we talked about as an example of or content to use for some prioritization tools, specifically the impact effort matrix and assumption prioritization matrix. We'll talk about it. It's interactive. This is just not me talking to you. So if you have questions, just jump in, ask questions. There will be some specific questions that I ask you for discussion, but this is interactive. It's not one way. And so, as I mentioned, I just want you to take something away from it that you can use today. I want to start trying to shape your thinking in a certain way. And then if you can learn to use the tool, then that's even better. So without further ado, vision, with respect to vision, can anyone personally tell me what their why is? Or can you tell me what your team's why is? Or can you tell me what your company's why is? That's an actual question.
Well, so, if we're true to our company's mission, our at GoDaddy, it's to help small business succeed. That's simple. That's the actual mission. Okay. My team, so I'm on the CX research and strategy team. Our why is to provide the customer knowledge company-wide so that wherever you're working on this experience in any part of the journey, you always have a sense of who that customer is and a deep understanding of the things that they care about to guide the work that you're doing.
Very good. Thanks, Tony. Anyone else?
I have a personal why. It's
great. Let's hear it.
To guide and support others so that together we can amplify our impact on the world.
Very good. Anyone else? We can do one more.
Ken here. I might butcher it. I don't know it verbatim, but it's
sure.
To help people reach their financial dreams and also be financially independent.
Okay.
I work for a credit union, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks for sharing, everybody. So, the point is, in the beginning here is, can you articulate what you stand for? Have you even considered it? You might know, you might kind of like know in your gut, but can you put it into words that you can communicate that really comes from you and speaks to who you are and helps people understand why you do what you do? In reality, for the vast majority of people, it's pretty vague because a lot of people don't spend the time to think about this. And so you got to commit some time to do that. So bravo to you that have something. And then if you haven't thought about it, then I hope that after this, you start kind of chewing on it a little bit and start thinking about, if that's something you want to know. This information comes from Simon Sinek. If you are familiar with him, he is a fantastic orator. He has some great books, and I think he's a very, very bright mind. And so this information comes from Start With Why, and then his exercise book, Find Your Why. And we were not going to watch the video, but I can post the link to this in the chat, and then you can watch it at your leisure if you haven't seen it, and this will give you some background. But the basic premise here is that people don't buy what you make, they buy what you do. They buy why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And the reason for that is because people connect with your why for making something, for providing a service, and then they either have the same belief or a similar belief, and they like what you stand for. And then you get people like Apple fanboys and people who love Nike, and they won't buy anything else because they like what they stand for. And so it would come to, what is vision traditionally? How has he redefined it beyond, just why do you do what you do? The traditional view of vision is that it's an aspiration to be something at some point in the future. So, and that's something that you're currently not, either individually or either as a group. And the problem with that view is that often, if you're talking about a corporate vision, often those messages are inconsistent with what they do day to day. Their actions don't align with what they're saying. And the solution to that in the vision as redefined is that people gain confidence in who you are today, not who you say you think you might be at some point in the future. So when you can articulate who you are and what you stand for, people will trust you and buy from you and work with you and partner with you and do more things with you because you're aligned to your words. Often traditional vision statements mention products or services in the statements, and the statement of intent of what you want to provide the world or a community should not mention what you do, because it's too specific and it doesn't provide connection. It doesn't drive behavior. So some examples of good vision statements that I think represent how it's defined, or at least how I'm communicating that it's defined. Now it says this is a mission statement, but it's more of a vision statement. To make a contribution to the world by making tools for the mind that advance humankind. It was Steve Jobs' original, he called it mission statement, but it's a vision statement for Apple. Another good example is Medtronic. It is to extend human life. And a couple not good examples. One that mentions what they do. To create a shopping experience that pleases our customers, a workplace that creates opportunities, and a great working environment for our associates, and a business that achieves financial success. Really inspiring, right? And then there's Kanye's vision of the future as president of the United States. Also not a vision, it's a poem. And often you'll get marketing statements that are called visions. So now we're going to kind of get into a little bit more of the meat here. So who's this for? Everybody. The question in the beginning was, can you articulate your personal why, your team why, your company why? It's for everybody. And especially if you're starting a company, you really have to know what you stand for. If you want to get people to come work with you, if you want to get investors, you got to be convincing. And if you're saying things that you don't actually believe, good luck to you. So it's for everybody so that you can better articulate who you are. And if I'm going too fast, just let me know. I do have a pretty dense bit of things that I want want to go over, but I'm happy to stop and slow down and answer questions. So I'm going to show you the exercise that our team went through to determine this question. What do we stand for? Why does our team exist? What do we collectively believe? This process is relatively simple and should be pretty familiar. Diverge and converge. That's several divergences and convergences. And what we're looking for is using this analogy of panning for gold. So as a team, and even as an individual, the answer of what your why is already within you. So it's not something that you develop and you conceive, you're actually looking for it. And so we're doing exercises to tease out the answer, whether or not it's you with a partner trying to figure out the answer for yourself, or it's you and your team trying to figure out the answer for your group. These are the steps in detail. I'm not going to dive into them, but just know that we'll talk about those as we go through the examples. But in general, we will talk about the stories of either your life or stories of your work as a team, and the impact that that's had, the actions you took to create that impact, and then you, as a team or individual, draft some why statements and wordsmith it so that it sounds the way that your gut says that it should sound. And so why do you start with stories? Well, that's a really important question, because that is the source of the emotion that's used for the decisions that you make. And as an individual, when you're doing this set of exercises, you're looking for meaningful stories that kind of shaped who you are. And then you use those to develop your vision statement. If you're a team, then you're looking. What's that?
You'll tell you. That's all.
No problem. If you're a team, then you're going to be bringing in collective stories about when you are proud to do the work you do, or when you are really proud to be on the team that you're on. And that question kind of changes based on the situation. So if you have a team that's been around for a long time, then the question would be more appropriate to be centered around when you were proud, a time when you're proud to be on the team, because the people have been there for a while. And if you have kind of a younger team, or it's kind of been turning over, then a question that's more appropriate is talk about a time when you're proud to do the work you do. So the stories are the source of action. They're the source of the emotion that tell us how we can affect the world. And so here are the examples of what we did with our team. And before I get into that, let's kind of like stop for a second, maybe slow down and see what you guys think. Is this making sense? Are there gaps, or do you want to make comments? What do you guys think?
That was really fast run through.
Okay.
It was. Of course, I think, I'm very familiar with traditional, like you set out there kind of traditional vision statements, and I think we've all been through a lot of those and understand why they might be antiquated, right? And then you're saying we're going from traditional to new, and you're using Sinek as a inspiration here.
That's right.
The methodology is coming from where? Like the idea of story?
It's from his exercise book. So this, okay. Yeah. This what I'm going to show you is his exercise book.
Got it. All right. So it's still through that.
Yeah. So fast run through. What is foggy? What did I not talk about enough?
There's a question in the Colleen makes it. I'm curious about what kind of individual stories I should pinpoint things from my work life.
curious about what kind of individual stories I should pinpoint. Very good. So very relevant question. So the questions that we're looking for, or I guess the kind of content we're looking for. So I'll go into the details here. So in the bringing in the stories, you're initially looking for a story that tells a specific time when you're most proud to do the work you do. And remember, I described like two types of team scenarios where you have one that's been around a while, and they would be more likely to have a larger number of them be more likely to have a story about the team. Or you have one that's maybe a younger team, and that's where this question would be appropriate. And so if it's an older team, you might ask, talk about a time when you were proud to be on the team you're on. And then that'll be specific to that group. Kind of individual stories. Okay, so I'm going to share you some examples that we got from our team. I think that will probably answer your question. That's the actual question that was asked, and then the answers that were provided are here. And we ended up selecting 3 of them. I think I might put Annika on the spot and get her to talk about her story, because I can never tell it as well as she did, because one of her stories was one we selected. So I think that would be a good way to answer your question. Who asked that? Colleen. So could you, Annika, would you mind just briefing, telling us about your story?
Yeah, thanks, Cody. I am most proud at work when I am helping my teammates to do their work better. And so a specific example that I'm really excited about is my coworker, Deepika. We were actually in graduate school together. And she came to me and said, you seem like you really know what you're doing. I'd like to learn from you. So I worked with her through grad school on a lot of projects and some side projects outside of class. And then after graduation, I helped prepare and recruit her for a role at Neudesic, the company I currently work with, and she got hired. And then I became her official mentor and had one-on-ones with her here, as well as some small group meetings with some other new designers. And just a couple weeks ago, we had our company quarterly awards, and she won an award for customer experience because she did such an amazing job with her client. And I was more proud of her winning the award than I think I would have been if I'd won it myself.
I'm muted.
Cody.
Yeah, thanks. I figured it out. Yeah, thank you, Annika. I appreciate it. For your question, Colleen, the idea in generating the story is you're looking for specific scenarios and specific events that generated a time when you were proud, right? And so that's what Annika came up with. Makes sense so far. I'm curious about what, okay, that helps. Hubby is cooking up a storm. It's loud here, thanks. Okay, cool. All right. So that was a perfect segue into kind of demonstrating the stories. And so what you do in the first part, the first divergence is you generate a bunch of stories and then you select them. And so these were the 3 we selected from Annika and Morgan Clark and Morin Sabanacher. And so we take those stories, and then now the goal and the next step is to identify themes. And the way you do that is you ask the team to use the stories going forward as the source of content. And you ask them to identify action statements. So here I had the team identify, I think they call it infinitive verbs. So like to appreciate, to innovate, to give, to listen, to support, statements like that. And so we generated a whole bunch of verbs, action statements, action phrases, and then we voted on them. And we got down to 5, and then we kind of debated it for a while. And mind you, we did this, all of this work over 3 sessions. So it took 3.5 to 4 hours as a team. So we kind of discussed this a little bit, and then we voted, and we ended up landing on to empower. So after all of the action statement generation, we narrowed down to this verb, that this is the action statement that we all felt like was the center and the primary theme of the 3 stories that we originally voted on. So we pulled to empower, and the next step is now you're going to talk about the impact. And this is where I can start showing you the format, how we communicate this. And so we have to empower, and what we're trying to come out with is the action that you're going to perform, or at least that you're going to communicate that you're going to perform, and then how that will impact anyone other than the creator. So if you're an individual, then your impact should be of benefit to anyone other than yourself. And it's the same for a team. So to empower, we want to empower anyone other than ourselves. You can, because it's a team, but as an individual, it's not about you. So to empower was the first part, contribution, impact. And then we generate impact statements. So everyone writes a sentence, again, about those 3 stories, and they extract what they perceive as the impact that was generated as a result of what they did in their story. Your specific stories could be about a project, a client, a conversation, or a person. Exactly. Well stated, Annika. So we're generating impact statements, and again, we're diverging, converging. So we are affinity mapping these, and we're selecting the best ones that resonate with us, that generate a real visceral reaction. When we see the statement, we automatically know, yes, that is it, right? That's the impact that we want to have. And we centered on confidence. And the way you get there is once you generate these stories, this is where the facilitator has to do some active listening and summarizing what they're hearing. Because what you see is you got some statements, and you need to pull the main idea out of it. And so the facilitator's job here at this point is to take those notes. That's what these are. These are notes of these impact statements, and then you use that to vote on. So it makes voting a little bit simpler. So now we're at to empower. That's our action statement, and confidence is our impact. And now we take the statements about confidence, and then we draft some different versions to come up with our final solution. This may take a couple of minutes. It could take much longer, and there's no really defined time here. It's just whatever is required for the team to say, yeah, I agree that that's how we should say it. And the facilitator is aiding the process to try and achieve a decision. So when you get to here, you have your action statement and your impact, and you're trying to form a sentence. So everyone writes their own candidate draft why statement, and then again you select diverge and converge. So we voted on and settled on our why here, which is to empower others with the confidence to create better experiences. And so for us as a design team, a research team, design thinkers, design technologists, a mix of design people, this is what we decided that and agreed that we stand for. And what's interesting, and is easier to demonstrate now that I've kind of explained how you go through this process, is that what you would get from a lot of logical thinkers is, oh, it's too broad, or I can't follow it because it's not telling me what to do. Well, what's unique about telling someone about your purpose and about why you exist is it allows you to make many different types of decisions. And in this case, to empower others, it doesn't matter who we're empowering. In fact, we know that we want to educate people with our team as well as outside of our team. So that's one way we empower them, by giving them new knowledge. And with the confidence as the impact to create better experiences, when you educate people and train them, they naturally should gain confidence. Can't say that for every single scenario, but in general, that is true. So it allows us to make decisions that coincide with what we believe. And when we produce things that coincide with what we believe, it attracts other people who believe what we believe. So it makes it easier to hire. It makes it easier to bring people into your group, whether or not it's at work. It doesn't matter. It makes it easier to communicate what you stand for. And people know what to expect of you. So whether or not it's inside or outside the company, it sets expectations. So let's,
One question.
yeah.
So after we've done this exercise, what's maybe it's a process. I'll just say process. What's the process of validating against it? When people say what their vision is and what they think we want to be, but their actions aren't matching to that, right? You could say one thing, but you don't do it.
Sure.
You know, like what are the challenges around that? You know, when we go through this, 4-hour long exercise and say we want to empower people, and then life happens or something happens, we're not in the position to empower. Do we make sure we try to change up that business flow, or that is it, what if my bosses or somebody's bosses or somebody above me, the top down kind of deal, starts getting in the way of that vision, and they're not maybe they're not privy to that vision yet, or they don't care about your vision. They have a vision. So like what do we have to do about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it leads right into the discussion that I wanted to have, the challenges and the realities of it, right? You will come across people who not only don't believe what you believe, but believe the opposite of what you believe and do get in your way. And I can tell you what Simon Sinek says about it, because people ask him this question. And he uses this to guide who he hires. And if people don't, as far as hiring goes, if people don't already believe what he believes, then it's no hard feelings. He just doesn't hire them. As far as if your team vision doesn't align with a corporate vision, that's difficult, right? I think that's.
So if he doesn't hire, you're able to fire.
If he doesn't hire,
what are we trying to do? Are we trying to bring them together? We trying to bring them together, or is it, if there is truly a behavior that doesn't align with what we said we were going to do, are we going to realign it because of that obvious change, obvious difference in our behavior, or do we try to force it back into that vision? I don't know if anybody else has a comment around that.
Yeah, Matt, can I go ahead and build off of that a little bit?
Yeah.
So Cody, one of the things, sorry, this is Cameron. One of the things I'm kind of thinking that, Matt, I have kind of the same problem as well with some of my coworkers, trying to get on the same vision, really get on the same page, but you don't want to exile them and just be like, well, go to your own island and just live on there. And that's your own vision and mission. So is there a way that you can kind of test those within a larger group set within your company, or with clients, or if this is your personal goal, even testing that with friends to see which one better aligns with your own vision?
Yeah, so if I can rephrase your question and make sure I understand it. I think what you're asking is, if you have, what do you, which I think is another version of what Matt is asking, right? Like, what do you do with someone who's either leading you, or you're leading, or you're working with, who doesn't believe what you believe? Is that the question?
Yeah, and are there are there processes to kind of overcome that? Like with design, we have A/B testing and all kinds of user testing, but this is a little bit different when it comes into your personal and your you goals. I can see that with your visions and your mission statements with the company, you can go and send that out to your clients and say, hey, what do you think? But how do you get people on the same page, and are there any processes with that?
Yeah, so I'm a big proponent for coaching, and having one-on-one conversations about what it is they want to find out. I don't think there's any one answer, because there's so many scenarios we can talk about. But I don't think there's one clear. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I mean, it being a manager of many different types of people, I think it comes down to having this. I mean, I could have a vision, and I have a vision of what I need to do with what my bosses need me to do, and then what the owner of Neudesic needs me to do. Right? There's a level of reporting and OKR kind of activity in what I need to do from an objective kind of point of view. Now, it might not align to my vision per se, or my mission in life as far as a human being or outside of work. Hopefully your work lands somewhere in there, because then that means you're doing something that you love, possibly. But I do see there's with the different variety of people that's in the Neudesic IDX team. I think there are, a lot of variety of missions inside of it. And I think a person that's leading people with different missions have to probably work with them to see how their mission benefits my mission. And it may not benefit my mission directly. There might be some indirect, correlations to the mission, because you don't want to throw somebody off of their mission and their, the things they love to do, because then they're most likely be off and running, because we're not providing them things that support their mission, possibly. So it's a little challenging from a manager or a company-wide type thing. Our team, hopefully that we're all on board with what we're trying to do, and maybe it points us to something that we all can get behind and we all feel good about it, even though it doesn't quite match perfectly. But for this particular effort and what we're trying to do right now, I know I go off out of work here, and I do my thing, the thing I really love to do. But when I'm at work, these are the missions that I have to go and do, just like in the military, you're not, I don't think everybody's, goal is to go and fight, all the time. That's not something that we want to do, but we have to do it. And there's a mission, right? I guess, for me as a manager, I think I would want to try to get them all together, understand them personally, understand what they want to do and what they love to do and what they're willing to do, and try to use that as a tool within the grand scheme of things. And then, there are times when you have an employee that just does not fit, and it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're not good at what they love to do. They're just unwilling to do the things I need them to do for money, and for value of the company. So it's challenging when it comes to that. I don't know if anybody else like Anthony or anybody else who has employees, having those types of conversations or struggles with it.
Well, I will tell you that the first thing it brought to mind for me is actually some of the methodology that happens in an agile transformation. And it's another process you go through that's revealing around your mission and your teams. And one of the things that in the agile side that it would talk about is that it will quickly reveal to you your problems. It will not solve your problems. And so in a sense here, like what I love about this activity is, maybe there was a blind spot, or maybe it's something that you knew but overlooked for whatever reason, that within this team to achieve this mission, there are some folks whose ideologies do not align. And maybe that's just been riding for a while until you did this activity, and now it's right in front of your face, right? Then it becomes a managerial discussion, or decision, and kind of how to do that. Like, Cody talked about coaching. You talked about kind of maybe a way of kind of coexisting around this. I will tell you, in the agile side, when we did this, what was painfully evident to us is we could not move forward with a couple of key individuals who were clearly not on board. And it just like you said, it's not that they were bad. In fact, one of these people was one of our most brilliant architecturally minded people, but we could not move forward. And we realized very quickly what was holding us back. And I think there's a big difference in these cases where you may have different personal missions, and you're marching to your own drum. And yet, can you align? If this truly works, you align and you bring that with you. You're part of the band. But if you're really not, you're really marching another direction. I think that becomes visible in this kind of activity too. And so one way or another, it works itself out. But what I like about it is it gets all of the voices seen and heard, and you can start to determine if it's something that can coexist or if it's something you have to manage in a different way.
I love that.
Yeah, I like the way you frame that, Tony, because we always have to work with people that are difficult for us personally. Everybody does, and I mean, I guess if I just had to summarize the first question you asked to start this discussion, Matt, is I guess we're looking for either a way to get everyone on board, or a way to continue to move forward until maybe that person decides to move on, or some other decision.
Yeah, I mean, I've had, like Tony's, brilliant people that just don't coexist with the rest of us. But then you got to be creative, right? You can do stuff with that person. They like to be alone. You can find alone activities. You can find things to do, assuming that is valuable to the group. I do feel like I spend a lot of time trying to be creative with the ideas or the ideologies of many different types of people that don't necessarily, maybe they don't gel with another person, but they gel with this other, like another group of people. Well, why would I keep forcing that divergent or that convergent behavior between two people that don't necessarily gel, or they have similar skill sets and they don't complement, or they're constantly fighting over who's the best and who wants to be the star, who wants to be the lead, stuff like that. Maybe that goes in maybe outside of this, but if we're trying to empower people, that's a tall statement, empowering them. Can you slide it over so I could get the phrase right? To empower others with the confidence to create better experiences. First of all, they have to have that confidence in the first place with skills, and we need to be able to give them the tools to be able to be good, right? But it doesn't mean I'm holding your hand all the time. You have to be willing to take on a lot of that, and invest in it. Else I'm doing the work, and I might as well just do the work then. But I do think placing people in the right positions to succeed, similar to a baseball team or something, like that. Like, why would you, a guy that's, or girl, I guess if it's softball or whatever, but if you're like a catcher, why am I constantly putting you in the outfield?
Right.
You know,
Or if you run a 4.440, why aren't you in the outfield?
yeah, or there's a different thing there because
Yeah.
you have to be fast and you have to catch stuff. Catchers can catch, right? I mean, but they may not be fast, and they're usually not built that way. So, and that's why you put them in those positions, because they're good at it. But I think that's with any team. You find their strengths, you find what they want to do, you find what they're willing to do, because sometimes what they're willing to do is a little bit more than what they want to do, and that's good too. But if what they want to do and they're not willing to do it for you, or it doesn't necessarily, you don't want to do the things I need to do, then that's when there's a disconnect around it, and we won't be able to.
I was gonna say, I liked your analogy of a baseball team, because everyone's got these different roles and these different skills and these different abilities. But when it does come back to the mission, they all want to play baseball and probably win.
Yes.
So if you have a guy who really wants to play hockey,
Yeah.
maybe this isn't the team for him.
Why is it? Although you can even go further on the baseball, like you just spawned an idea for me on this. If everybody's mission is to win a game, why is the catcher constantly griping about not being out in the outfield, right? We all know you're better here and you're not accepting it. But, I don't know how that fits in, and we're not going to win the game if we do that. Anyway.
Good points.
And I think that comes back to, Cody's we should have a vision that aligns us all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that statement, that's the game, right? That tells us what game we're playing. Any other thoughts before we move to the next section? All right. So the next part, we're going to talk about my personal take on mission statements. Tony said, afraid I have to drop tonight. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming, Tony. Okay, we're going to talk about my personal take on mission statements. Now, my personal take is informed by the military. And I'm going to present the vehicle that the military provides for understanding jobs to be done. And the reason I'm going to teach it this way is because I want to force you to think about familiar information in a different context so that you kind of question it and you'll remember it better. At least that's my intent. And so we're going to talk about what mission statements are, why they're important, and we're going to how to write them. The intent at the end of this is not necessarily for you to go use the tool. Awesome if you can. In fact, I think even better if you can. But if this changes the way you think about what I think of a mission statement as, then I think that's a win. So I'm just trying to change your perspective a little bit. And then, and with respect to communication, these elements that I'm going to talk about and the way I talk about them are for two main purposes. If you're a leader, I hope that it can help you provide better clarity. And if you're a follower, I hope that it'll help you ask for better clarity. So what is a mission? Well, defined, it's a specific task for a person or a group to go do. You're going to go do something, and it's a self-imposed objective or purpose. And the structure of a mission contains a task, a job to be done, and a reason for doing it. And that reason for doing it is exceedingly critical because it helps the person who's tasked to understand A, why the task exists, and B, how to make decisions in spite of additional explicit instruction. Some of the benefits here are that it creates focus. It helps define what leadership wants of you if you're a follower. It helps provide awareness of what other people are doing if different groups are tasked in the same way. It provides clarity of the job that needs to occur. It unifies a team under one single effort. And as in design thinking, it's holistic thinking. And I'm going to show you why that is. It also shows you gaps that you're missing in providing tasks. And a quote I pulled from the text that this comes from different military, Marine Corps leadership writings. And I changed some of the vocabulary to fit how we're working here. But it says the teams should be task organized to take advantage of their capabilities and habitual relationships. So we'll talk about those habitual relationships. So what's the structure? Well, as I mentioned, it's two main parts, a task and a purpose, but there's some other information that goes along with it. It's kind of like you've got the main course, and you've got your drink, and you've got your side items. So the task, we'll get in with task and purpose, we'll get into in a second, but I want to talk about the items that go with it first. The first really important piece is intent. And intent defined is an aim or a state of mind, a way of thinking about the purpose of doing something. What I've put here is it's a description of the end state that a leader wants to see done. And the way I think about it is a comparison with the mission. So the mission describes a forward-looking goal, and the intent describes a rearward-looking goal. So intent says, when I'm finished with the mission, what I want to say that happened. I want to describe it in a different way so that the purpose is complete. The purpose is fully described. And then when we provide this task, I didn't explicitly say over here, but I think I wrote that all missions are tasks. Yeah, all missions are tasks. I want to make sure that I verbalize that because that's important here. And so when I'm talking about making a task or a mission, I need to do a very important thing. I need to pick a main effort. And I'm going to ask you how you think this relates to something you already know by defining it. And so it's a group or individual that is focused on the primary task. And that task must succeed for the overall goal to be accomplished. So like, what's another word that you guys use that you hear, it's a business word that this represents? And you can only have one per task.
What's the question again?
The question is, I'm looking for a familiar word that everyone knows, and it describes how I'm defining the main effort. The main effort is a group or individual that's focused on the primary task of your mission. We ask it of our clients all the time. We ask it of our leaders all the time. What I'm looking for is, what's your priority? And oftentimes what we ask is, what are your priorities? Plural. But here, the distinction, a very important distinction, is you want to know what the priority is. One, singular, one priority. And the reason for that is because it forces you to focus your energy on the most critical element of the thing you're trying to accomplish. I was talking to Matt, I think, yeah, Matt G's on here today. Earlier, we were talking about multitasking. Multitasking is a myth for human beings. We can't do multiple things at once. The best we can do is we can train ourselves to do small tasks very quickly, back to back to back. And then it looks like we're doing more than one at once, but we're not. Same thing for a team. The team can't effectively go far quickly if we're focused on too many priorities. So we have to focus on one thing at a time, and then we add supporting elements that I call them supporting effort. And then we use other individuals or other teams to provide supporting energy to make sure that the main effort wins. This is how we generate focus. So that's all other individuals or all other teams if you're like a large department.
Listen to music.
Focused on What?
Does listening to music and doing music and there's an echo.
Oh. Sorry, I didn't hear it because of the echo.
I know. I don't know why it's echoing. Okay, is it echoing? Okay.
Is that me?
No, making a joke that you can listen to music and do other things. In fact, I often do better things when I'm listening to music, which is kind of funny. Maybe I'm not really listening to it. It's just flowing through me.
We won't get into the neuroscience right now. But that's the idea, right? Because we're trying to focus our energy. So how do you format this? If you want to write it and communicate it, it should be quite familiar. And the reason it should be familiar is because it's actually very similar to a user story, right? A user story says, what should the function, the feature do for the user, and why does it need to exist? It's the same thing here. But we're using some different words and phrases to achieve the communication the level of communication we want to achieve. And so we have a task and a purpose and a conjunctive phrase that connects the two. A conjunctive phrase is like to, or in order to, or so that, or for, something that joins the sentence. And then much like the vision, we're looking for verbs and action statements, but these are specific to the domain of the work you do. So if you're a researcher, it might be some specific research task. Go conduct a contextual inquiry. If you're a designer, maybe it's build a design system for your client's application. If you're in finance, it might be go get funding, investor funding, so that you can keep the engineering teams going. Whatever it is, a specific to your domain, it should be a task organized. How do I determine what my purpose is? Well, it should be focused on the main effort. What is the main effort? It's your one singular priority. So we'll talk about how you phrase that. And so the steps to do this is first you write a group team mission, then you designate a main effort, so you pick your priority, and then you write that mission or task, and then you create supporting effort, mission, or tasks. Before we go to the example, what questions do you guys have?
Hi, it's Fran. I don't have any. So I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the examples here. So this will be an interactive part. So the first example, if I could get somebody to just read through these.
Example 1. This is Colleen. Development team mission to provide iterative software designs so the product team can continuously deliver high value features. Design team task. Task to create UI designs for version 1.4. Conjunctive phrase to correct them. Oh, I'm kind of jumping.
Yeah, you can skip that part. Sorry.
So design team task to create UI designs for version 1.4 to correct the mobile app usability problem. Research team task to provide accurate user research on the user problem so the design team can update the mobile app. Dev team task to implement the version 1.4 fixes so the update can be downloaded by the user. And marketing team task to advertise the version 1.4 update so users will know their problem has been solved.
Excellent. Thank you. So as a group, I'd like to start labeling things. And can someone tell me based on what Colleen just read out, can you pick the priority? What is the main effort here? What are we focused on? So we have, this is our overall mission, and we have tasks to accomplish that mission. And only one of these can be the main effort. Only one of these can be a priority, and the rest are supporting the priority. So let's start with the main effort. Which one of these team tasks is our primary focus?
Research. It should always be research. Otherwise, you don't know that you're building anything properly.
Okay.
I don't know why you would design if you're not designing to fix whatever it is that people need fixed.
No, but the research is supposed to support the design team as well. So the overall output is supposed to be your design or whatever you're trying to create, right? The research, you do research before to try to understand what you're trying to do. Research to support your designs, but ultimately it's supposed to support the design.
Yeah, I would say in general, sometimes research has to come before design and sometimes design has to come before research. But in this specific one, it looks like the research needs to identify the usability problems because the design team is like their purpose is to fix those problems. So I don't know, the word priority makes it feel like it's more important. But in my mind, chronologically, research comes first.
What about you, James? What do you say? You're the leader. What's the priority?
Let's fast track that research so we can get the answers we need.
Okay.
Well, I guess the priority is to ship a good product, right? Because it doesn't matter all your research and then if it's designed well, but then it still needs to be built. But I'm one of those people who thinks design and research should come before development. But if we're talking about what the ultimate priority is, you need to get something shipped. So then it's a question of what do we need to get shipped? And in order to figure out what we need to get shipped, it goes back to research.
I was thinking that too.
Okay. Anyone else have a different thought? So you guys actually highlighted something I was going to talk about in the next example. So I'll talk about it here as well. The first thing is the priority depends. It depends on who is setting the priority. Now, I'll tell you what I intended for this example, but it's not necessarily the right answer because clearly everyone had a different opinion. Now, a lot of people converged on research, but why they converged on research was all varied. When I created this example, I intended the design team to be the main effort, the priority. Why? Because delivery, in my mind, as the person writing the task and the purpose for the task was to deliver. And then the rest were supporting. Now, there's a valid argument for it to be research. A very valid argument, right? Because you can't design if you don't know what the problem is. And based on this, research is telling you what the problem is, right?
Hi, it's Red. Yeah. So for me, it's like we're doing designs for 1.4. If we don't know what the problem is, what's wrong with 1.3? Why are we redesigning if we don't know there's stuff that we need to be fixing? So sorry, I'm very opinionated about this stuff because everything's always backwards that I'm used to. So I get a bit ardent.
So then you highlighted something really important, right? Then it makes the leader's intent. Remember we talked about intent? The leader's intent even more important because it has to be super clear because there's so many different opinions that exist. That doesn't mean that his answer is right or it should always be his or her decision. But it shows that it depends on who is doing the tasking, right? And that was the point in my next example is a sustainment example, because the main effort can change depending on the needs of the mission, of the task at hand, the overarching task. So this one's slightly different. And the development team mission is to update the desktop application so it's more secure and safeguards company and employee data. And then you have some additional work that's happening here. You have an engineering team now that needs to re-architect security protocols. So now we have a different question. What's the main effort here? We like to think as designers and researchers that we're the most important thing in the room, because we do work that no one else can do. But there's an argument there that engineering does work that we can't do, right? So how does this change? What's the main effort here? What do we think about this? And first off, actually, before we jump to that, what do we think the design team's task is here? Is design needed?
Unfortunately, in my experience, it's not. They just need to know what needs to be fixed. All of this is already done. This is a security issue. So this is just, engineering and development based, generally speaking, we don't have the skill set in order to figure out what those security and architectural problems, it's programming. So now they wanted us to redo an interface to make it easier for people to manage their permissions. Sure. Then definitely we'd have a role in that. But in this, for me, no. Unless then we're going back and we're doing some form of usability testing to make sure that it's working properly. But then that would probably fall to the QA team if you have a QA team. And if not, then it would fall back to the designers to do usability testing. That's
right.
my
Yeah, and I didn't even mention everybody. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I didn't even mention QA, but it's just an example. But I personally think you're exactly right. Design's not needed, right? And so my intent in writing this could have been different than someone else's. To your point, what if part of that change included some UI changes to allow the user to manage their own data, right? Like Facebook options, don't share my data, right? But they do anyways. So
yeah, I was gonna say,
actually, Facebook's probably not a good example there. Probably, maybe a more ethical company.
it also kind of depends on like who is your design team. Is it a UI design team? Or is it a UX design team? Maybe some of these security issues are caused by behaviors.
Maybe.
And the UX can come up with strategy to change those behaviors that may or may not involve a UI.
Mm-hmm. That could be true if the purpose was different, right? But in this case, what's the purpose? To safeguard and secure data.
Yeah, I was wondering if the data was not safe because of a behavior issue.
Yeah, it's a relevant question. I didn't go.
Which goes back to the research.
The example, but yeah, it's a very good question. So for me, I said engineering is the main effort, and everyone else is supporting. Again, main effort, priority. What's your focus? And a third example. So this one is might be a little more challenging. We'll see. There's multiple things going on here. So the first thing that I want to point out is how many of a show of hands, how many people experience whatever it is you're supposed to do is either completely unclear or so unclear that you have to go ask a whole bunch of questions. I know it's got to be more than Annika. Yeah, I'm sure it's all of us, right? And one way you can get there to understand someone's intent so that you can make decisions about what you need to do is to look for the implied intent. Implied intent, remember, we're talking about what the leader wants to have happen after the thing is done, but they weren't clear about what they want to have done when you're finished. So here, I mean, you may not have an explicitly written task like this. You might have to extract information from someone else, go talk to somebody. You might have to source it some other way. But here you can infer that the leader's intent comes from the overall mission of the group. So the product team continuously deliver high value features. So this is going back to our first example. So what could we infer that the intent of the product group is based on this team's mission? It's this right here. That's it. That's what they're intending to have happen. It's generally the same, even if it might be worded a little bit different, it's the same. That's the intent. What might the product group mission be? Probably something in the realm of this, right? I don't know. Depends on what the leader decided, if they decided. The thing I want you to take away here is that there's so much variability that there's no one right answer. And it depends on who is creating the task. It depends on who's doing the task. It depends on how the task is interpreted. And it depends on the lens with which you look at the task based on the work you do. But truth be told, as often as possible, we want to designate one, thank you, Amber, one main effort, one priority. Just a look kind of to think about how this works over time. So we want to create mission hierarchies and spread that out over time. So a vision, it should be unchangeable, right? Once it's established, it's the way it is until the founder leaves, usually. And then at that point, then usually the vision degrades and this culture changes, and then they have to kind of refine themselves. But in theory, the vision is permanent. And then everything you do going forward, your strategy, the missions you create, the tasks you perform, the team tasks that you perform change with the change in strategy, but still speak to the same vision. So what else do you think you guys can use this for? I mean, this is, we're talking about formal tasking, like providing things for people to do at work, but I have a few examples up here, but what about outside work?
I know for me, I just like the idea of having one priority. That's really hard for me because I do multitask too much. And it's hard for me to just pick the one thing, and I'm trying to get better at that and just think, what's the one thing I need to do today? What's the one thing I need to make sure is delivered at the end of the day? I like that.
Cool. I like it. Matt, the question was, what else can we use this for? I know you missed some of it, but the team tasking, setting one single priority, using your resources to support that single priority.
Well, kind of I don't know why I come back to, there it goes. I try to, it sounds funny, try to really get one thing completed every day, instead of trying to accomplish 5 things or 6 things, half the way through, possibly not even, especially at home, not really at work. There's a bunch of stuff I have to bounce off of, but like at work, like if I'm focused in on a very specific thing I need to do, that's the mission would be like, right now I need to get this filter put into my fridge. So like getting an inline, my mission is to get the parts and understand how to hook up an inline filter to the fridge, and that's my mission today. And then maybe tomorrow I don't have the parts, so I can't do it today, but so that's one of those things where there's like certain research I have to do, look up videos of how you do the piping and and everything else. So I mean, you can apply it to pretty much anything that I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the key here is, do you need to really, go write these things? I think it helps in certain ways. I've used it as a product owner for clients and use it to help them set priorities for certain phases of work and certain feature sets, because it helps them understand what it is they need to do in an environment where they expect chaos. Right, so we're bringing order and structure to chaos. So in the end of the day, it helps us assign clear tasks with a purpose. It helps us verbalize and or ask for intent if we're a follower, whether a follower or leader. And the ask here is to start thinking about removing the word priorities from your vocabulary and start saying priority, right? Because that allows us to focus and move forward faster when we do, I know I'm going to bring some reality into this. I'm kind of talking theoretical in some sense, but as often as we can, focus on one thing at a time, and integrate team efforts. So the complementary tasks that we created, or that I demoed to you, right? It depends on who's creating the tasks, but at the end of the day, the support should have different tasks that aid the priority. And then you want to create hierarchies because it enhances awareness and makes it easier to control the overall effort. All right. How much time we have? 7:30. Any other, you kind of talked about it a little bit a moment ago, but any other thoughts here on this stuff? What do you think? What are some challenges with this?
Getting people to actually sit down and do it. For me, a lot of times they just go ahead and they just want to get stuff done and they don't want to do a lot of pre-planning. So yeah, or it's just very broad strokes and nothing's really put down. So, which is very frustrating for someone like me who really likes to think about things and sees all the different pieces and how they are interconnected and influence each other. So
yeah, I did a job down in New Mexico City a couple, maybe, what was it, like 8 years ago, and was working for a bank, talking to the CIO, I believe it was, and we were trying to go through an exercise, not necessarily this structure. This might have helped, but we're trying to understand the mission and the why we're here, what we're doing, and it in his brain just kept on going back to I need to save money, or I need to make money, I need to do this, and that was definitely an objective, right? And the key result was to save the money. That more of an OKR discussion, but I wonder how it would be if we would have taken him through something like this. But I find that his temperament, I don't know if he would have gotten through this, without kicking us out. Maybe
I can give you a similar example. I think it might have been at my last client, but the anxiety was really high. Very similar to that, right? Just needed to get it done, right? And there's so much stress that they feel like they don't have time to answer these questions. What I've done is sometimes I'll just do it for them. I'll go figure it out for them, and then I'll present it to them and ask them, what do you think about this? Do you agree? And if they don't, then you change it right then and there with them, right?
Yeah,
get them to do it with you. Huh?
Yeah, it would get the conversation started. So as on the spot extraction of why and mission is pretty tough. Possibly with this process, it would actually help guide it better. But for the most part, because they were a bank and because Mexico's generally the people are fairly distrusting of where they put their money, at least back in years ago. It was tough to get a true national Mexican to actually trust putting their money in a bank. There's also a thing there that they don't really have a social security number identification. Not everybody has one. They started instituting it, but still people are resistant to it. So there was a lot of hardship on the bank side to verify people, right? So there's a lot of problems with it. And but what the bank was trying to do, the mission was, or the why was that because it would be, this was the statement we kind of came up with, is because everyone has a right to save money, right? Or everybody has a right to have a place where their money is safe, and invest, and that wasn't part of it, but basically the idea is to put it somewhere where they can invest, like a Betterment. It was called Betterment, but it was kind of like Mint, where they can trade and do stuff like that with their savings and stuff like that, which is a tall order for a person that doesn't want to have anything to do with the bank. So so the behavior was already against us when it comes to that. So there's a lot of messaging and things like that we had to figure out how you get them to do that. And then and then there's a logistical problem too with it. So the mission really involved a lot of things. So like if a person wanted to invest, an actual human being would have to go to their house and verify the license or the ID to the online subscription. Like they could do everything online. They could sign up. They just can't do anything until a person comes to their house and actually checks for the ID, or the ID picture, because there might not be a number yet, or they don't have a social, or whatever they call it. It was very hard to do that. But the bank truly believed in the ability to have savings, to be able to, look towards your future, and have security in your future. So that was the mission. And the mission really steered us into trying to overcome some of these logistical issues and the behavior issues of the Mexican people. And that's a general term, because a lot of people, I don't know if you know, Mexico City is the biggest city in the world. It's a ridiculous amount of people, but so not everybody's like that, but generally that's the behavior. So, but we could have used this back then.
Cool. All right. Any other thoughts?
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the fate of the bank? Are they still around?
Oh yeah, they're the biggest privately owned Mexican bank. It's called GBM.
That's great.
Yeah, it's called Grupo Busatil Mexicano.
I'm really happy to hear that they managed to come out on the other side.
Oh
That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. And there were other, the other banks which are even less popular were like Bank of America and those kind of things down there. But yeah, this one had the advantage because it was owned by privately owned by it's privately owned by the richest man, I think, in the world, Mr. Slim. Which, you have some little things there too, there's almost, multi-billionaire owns a bank, right? And you're giving him money, which starts becoming weird too for them. But yeah, I believe they're still around. I don't think they would have failed through the pandemic. I got sick like 3 times when I was down there, so that's good. Make sure you take grape seed extract when you go down.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Grapeseed extract? What does grapeseed extract do?
It kills the viruses and things. And if you can take it before you go, and you can like take it a few days before you go anywhere, like some places like that. It will, it's a virus killer. I ended up getting, I was starting to get really comfortable, right? Like I'm starting to go out and do sushi, do a bunch of crazy places that I normally wouldn't eat at in the beginning. And then finally hit me. I went to this place, that little funny anecdotal story. It was the Microsoft rep developer for Microsoft Consulting Services, their team in Mexico. We started getting friends, and I was like, I want to go to some kind of authentic place, which is the kiss of death statement, I think, at this point. And he's like, oh, I got a perfect place for you. So he takes me to this joint, and we go through the front door when we went in, and that's pretty relevant to the story as I tell it here. So we go in, and it's like real old school, like kind of really bright, a lot of fluorescent lighting and these weird tables and old men playing chess in the corners. It's like a strange joint. And we ordered some pabil, and I had awesome like onion jalapeno or onion habanero salsa type stuff on the table. It was just sitting there, right? It wasn't like it was brought out. So that's probably that one problem of it. I'm just eating the hell out of it. And then it was so good. And then we leave through the back door, and then that's where I saw an alleyway full of like pig parts and buckets full of legs and heads, and like a butcher block back there. And that's where they slaughtered the pigs for the pabil. And it was like, oh wow, now I'm nervous. And soon enough, me and a friend of mine that had the same thing, we ended up getting giardia, and it took us out for 3 weeks. Like it was like I had to go on like major antibiotics and stuff, like two of the strongest antibiotics to kill it. And even then, it took like months before my body was back to normal, and even probably now it's not really back to normal. So make sure, I don't know if grapeseed extract would kill that, but it definitely, you got to be careful. It wasn't good. I had to take a flight back, and I was in the hotel room for like 3 or 4 days. It was like in the beginning of the week, and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna go home. Like I can't even walk. So I ended up getting as much, like, talk about like walking through an airport with COVID. I mean, I looked like death walking through. Like I was just sweating, and like,
People will be running from you today.
huh?
People will be running from you today.
Yeah, they would. That wouldn't fly.
Literally.
Yeah, I just wanted to like. My only hope was not to throw up on the plane, and any other thing I needed to do. So yeah, it was pretty nuts. So there's my Mexico shit story.
Nice. All right, I want to wear you guys out too much, so I'll go ahead and wrap this up. I got two last things to go over. So we talked about vision, which guides all decision making. We talked about the missions, which tells us specifically what to do. Yeah, it was specifically what to do within the context of the vision. And then now some tools to help us prioritize what we need to do for the mission. First one is impact effort matrix. So the impact effort matrix is used when you know what you need to go do, but you need to sequence it. You need to put it in the right order based on what the highest priority item is. And the way you determine the highest priority item is by selecting the work items that have the biggest impact on the user, and and initially, so the first things that you do, pick the ones that have the highest impact and the lowest effort. And effort here is defined as how hard it is to make or integrate. And you take the work items and you place them on the chart, and it tells you what order they should go in. So you can use this for planning new products, for planning upgrades, for planning design changes to legacy applications, and it helps you communicate the actions that you're going to take under the umbrella of your mission. So in using it, there's two methods that you can use. The first one is voting, which we're all familiar with. You can take the work items to be done, and then you can vote with two different colored dots and that represent impact and effort, and then you place them on the chart. So if this one to create design system had 2 red and 2 green, it would go somewhere in the middle. But something that's really important is that you can't place it on the line, because you need to be able to group these things. So you get the team to pick which category it goes in. And that's really why I like the design sprint method a little better. Because this takes a little bit longer. This is a little faster, and at least in my observation, I don't see much of a difference in the outcome. And so the design sprint method is quite simple. So once you have your list of things you need to do for your goal, you take the first sticky, and whoever the informant is, so it might be an SME, it might be a leader, it might be a couple of team members, but as the facilitator using this tool, what you're going to do is you're going to take the first item and you put it in the middle, and you say, okay, we need to create a design system. And you pick an axis to align with first. So I like to start with impact, and I say, okay, is creating a design system going to have more or less impact on the user, on the overall product? Is it more or less impact? It's going to have more. Okay, how much more? Like here or here? High. Okay, high. All right, now how much effort? Is going to have more or less? More or less. And for this thing, they're going to say more, right? So it's going to be really high effort, really high impact, because it takes a long time if it's especially if it's a complicated product to build. So this is going to end up in the upper right quadrant, which becomes a project. So this is something you'll end up road mapping, because it's going to take a significant amount of time. But I'm going to give you a different example. We'll come back to that. Where's sorry. Oh, the real data I have is on the next chart. Okay, so we're actually going to do an exercise to determine kind of how this works. So I just want you to just come up with a couple of things that need to be done underneath the tasks that we talked about earlier. Remember, this is our example from before. So give me 1 or 2 things that need to happen for each one of these tasks to occur. So let's just pick one for the research task. Everybody talks about the research quite a bit. So what's a research item that needs to occur to provide accurate user research on user problems so the design team can update the mobile app? What's something that it might need to do? Let's pick something that's relatively easy to do. How about a survey? Let's assume that it's already, that we already know what we need to ask. So we just need to send out the survey. So then when we would put this on the chart and we say, okay, how much impact? Pretty high impact, right? It might be somewhere over here. And then we say, what's the effort level? It's probably a little bit lower because it's already made. We already know what we need to ask. We just need to send it out and get it to the right people so we can get the feedback we need. So it'll go somewhere over here. And so what you'll end up with is a list of quick wins. And when you start sequencing the work for you to do, you're going to start with the quick wins first. And my recommendation is to schedule those to try and do them in the next 30 days. And this is going to give your team a boost. It's going to show that you are trying to act quickly it's going to satisfy leadership requirements, and you're going to show progress. So you try and get those quick wins done first, and then you roadmap the projects that are in the upper right corner over time, and then you make a collective decision as to whether or not those items in the bottom, these low impact items, whether or not they're high or low effort or worth your time. Because this one is going to be a low ROI set of tasks, right? Low effort, low impact. And then this is not really going to have very much impact, and it's going to take you a lot of energy. So is it worth it? I don't know. Depends on what it is. So that's an impact effort matrix. Now we have another matrix called the assumption prioritization matrix. And this comes from Lean UX. I'm sure this is probably pretty familiar, but the assumption prioritization matrix is a little bit different. So in the last one, we knew what we needed to go do. We just needed to put the work in the right order so it made sense, and it was performed according to dependencies. So we had more information. Here, this is designed for a condition with which we don't know what we need to do yet. So we're going to make a guess, and that guess comes in the form of a business hypothesis. Matt, you asked if we were going to talk about the hypothesis structure. I'm not going to teach like how to make it, but here is the structure, and then I'll give you an example in a second. So you're going to make an educated guess about what it is you need to go do. And then you're going to make some assumptions, meaning we think these things are true, but we don't have evidence for it. So that evidence is doing the user research. So you need to go prove it, or you need to disprove it. And sometimes people scoff at wasting your time to go find out that you disproved something. I think that's a good thing. Why? Because if you're doing this in a relatively timely manner and you disprove your assumptions, you've spent very little time and effort doing it. So you've saved money by realizing you don't need to go do something that you assumed you did, that some SME told you that you did, and you found out from users they don't care, or it's just not that important. But if you do prove it, then you have evidence. And then now you can create missions around that, tasks. And you can give teams things to do. Now that you've proved that that is important to a user, there's a really high probability that you should go make it. And here on this chart, we're going to place needs, goals, and pain points. This is something that I kind of added to kind of add you probably a little bit of clarity. I think is helpful because in the book they don't really call that out. They just say assumptions. Well, in our world, assumptions are needs, goals, and pain points. If we don't know what those are, if we're using SME information to guide it. And so here we're going to scale it on knowledge and risk factors. And risk in this case means how bad would it be if our assumption was wrong. And then the knowledge piece is just how much do we understand about this aspect that we've assumed. And so if you score up here in the upper right corner, those are the things you need to go find out about, because these are high risk unknowns, meaning, I'll summarize it. It would be really bad for us to not know this. So we should go find out right now. And then I've named out these. So the upper left would be a parking lot. You can wait on it. You don't know a lot, but it's not going to hurt you if you don't go find out. You know a lot, and it's really low. It's really low risk. It's not going to benefit you. So this is kind of like the low, kind of like the money pit potentially. And then the bottom right is roadmaps. You can put those out longer term because you know more about those items, and they are high risk, so you know that they're important to not if you didn't know. Here's actually an article I pulled out that was pretty good that has some questions to ask if you don't know how to ask for assumptions. So you can ask what the needs are, like I called out needs, goals, and pain points. How will they make money? And you make an assumption. Well, I think they make money by selling these particular items. So you can ask any number of these questions. And then I'm going to show you an example with real information from a project that I've anonymized. So this is a real hypothesis and real assumptions that I actually made with a current client. And so our hypothesis here is the example is we believe that the use cases produced by our SMEs will be valuable to anonymized executive role buyers. So this is actually like a C-suite role. And we will know we are right when we see the following feedback from the market. So the feedback is the SMEs said, we think these 3 things will be valuable to executives if the platform can answer the question. And so now our SMEs are actually actively interviewing these C-suite executives and getting that feedback. They just started this week. And so I'm going to meet with the researcher and the SMEs to get those results on Friday. And so we did this based on these assumptions and we prioritized those out. And so this is all real information based on an actual project. So to summarize, everything feeds another element. So vision communicates our values and what we believe. Mission tells us what to do and how to take action, and we can prioritize that with some tools so we can see our vision come to life. I know that was a lot, but I think some of it was really important. Maybe you knew all of that and maybe it was just a refresher, but hope that you guys enjoyed it and that there was something valuable that you can use.
It was really great. Thank you. Thank you.
Any
Thanks,
questions?
Cody. Thanks, Cody.
Or thoughts?
Awesome. Well,
Cool.
hopefully, hopefully you can to your work and to your life, I suppose. We have, so next week, thanks, Cody. Next month, we have Tony that was on earlier. He's going to be going over journey mapping and what's the other one? Journey mapping and another map. Oh, empathy mapping. I'll probably help him out with that. So if you're around on the March 9th, we're going to go over those 2 techniques. Super helpful when you're trying to understand, the motivations of people and then their journey through a process or a scenario. So it's something that we do at Neudesic a lot. Helps us really understand that the pain points throughout that process and how people feel about those pain points and their motivations through it. So definitely encourage you to come next month, almost exactly a month from now. And, bring your friends. If you're new, we do this every month, every second Wednesday of the month. And looks like the next one will be April 13th. And we even have somebody for that. And kind of relevant to the journey mapping, but now it's the value of that process. So it's going to be a nice, nice 2 months to understanding a bunch of mapping. So hopefully you can make it. And like I said, tell your friends. And we're going to have in August, we're going to have a social, usually do a mid-year social where we'll just meet up somewhere and have a beer and just talk UX or talk whatever you want. So hopefully we did that last year and it was awesome. So we really had a great time. And then if you have never gone to the UXmas party, it's our 6th year on that one. And we'll probably do it at Snakes and Lattes. We usually do it there because it's a lot of fun. They really cater to us. There's a lot of game playing and things like that. It's downtown on Mill. So, keep that open if you want. And then there's always World Usability Day every November. So that one, we'll have to probably start gearing up for that and trying to figure out, where are we going to have it? If it's going to be online or if it's going to be virtual again. Frankly, I would love to have it in a place, but we'll see what happens. All right. I guess I'm going to shut down the recording and